Hello and welcome to the Federal. You're watching our very special series which we have been doing for the past few months to mark the centenary year of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh or the RSS. We have looked at various aspects of it, its relationships with other affiliated organizations, its policies, its programs, how it gradually emerged from the total margins of society, its role in various conflicts in Indian society. We have looked at various things, but there is something very intrinsic whenever we talk about the RSS. We know its relationship with the BJP; they are connected, and whenever we talk about the RSS BJP, invariably we come across this word. We use it also in our vocabulary. It's become part of it. The Hindutva. Now, Hindutva is defined in very many ways. We really do not know as a society what really Hindutva means. So, I'm going to be talking about trying to decode Hindutva. I'm going to be looking at various aspects related to that, and I will be speaking with very senior journalist and author Ashutosh, who is a familiar face for all of you. So, welcome to this program, Ashutosh, and
Thank you, sir.
I am aware of the fact that in 2019 I eventually read it, and then just before our program, when we decided to do this episode once again, I went and read your book Hindu Rashtra, which was published in 2019-20. That is the time that you worked on it. So we will begin our conversation with that. What is Hindutva? Now, I'll just give you a backdrop as to how I understand the issue and then pose you a very specific question. I'll just take some time. Now, Savarkar also explained it differently. He also said, that it's a word which really cannot be explained. There have been various kind of things. But he also said, that Hindutva had an essential nature, an essential significance, and an essential meaning because it had existed for more than 4,000 years. Now, Vinayak Chaturvedi, the professor who's worked on Savarkar and, for a long time, he wrote this book called Hindutva and Violence. He wrote, now I'm quoting him, he said that perhaps the most audacious passage he meaning Savarkar, penned in Essentials of Hindutva, the first book, which is also referred to as Hindutva, Who Are We, where he states Hindutva is not a word. Now, this is Savarkar's word. Hindutva is not a word but a history. Hindutva is not a spiritual or religious history. It is history in full. Now, what does he mean by history in full? Big question mark. We journalists, we have tended to use Ashutosh Hindutva as quite often as an adjective in the English language. For instance, we write very frequently Hindutva Brigade. From your book, you have phrases like Hindutva warriors, Hindutva politics, meaning that it's an adjective which defines the noun. Now, if I ask you that to a layman, to our viewers who are engaged with politics but don't really precisely understand what is Hindutva, how will you go about doing this?
Nilanjan, thank you so much for this talk. I think this is very, very important talk. But before answering a question, let me just put it in perspective. The perspective is that RSS and Hindutvadi, they have a tendency to confuse issues and to keep changing their goalposts. So if you normally talk to anybody who belongs to Savarkarite thought of thinking and the RSS thought of thinking, they will intermixing Hindutva and Hinduism. And they will keep telling you that you are insulting Hindutva. In my opinion, what Savarkar has defined is, I think, again, an attempt to try to give an ideological coloring to the exploitation of Hindu religion for the political ends. So, in my opinion, Hindutva is nothing else but the political ideology of which is using Hindutva, which is using Hindu religion per se. It is something like this. It is like Islamists, they use Sharia, Islamists, they use Islam for their political gains. Because through Hindu religion, they try to gain legitimacy to their political goals, to their political aims. Similarly, like Islamists, they try to gain legitimacy in the eyes of larger Islamic world uh, uh, through Sharia, through Hadith, and through the life of Paigambar Muhammad. So I know that there will be many of your viewers who will get very upset when I will comparing this, but I'm comparing not the two religions per se. I'm only trying to build a parallel how the religion has been used and exploited in the Indian context for their political purposes, for the political use. And if you see clear, if you follow this, you will understand that the Savarkar was not a religious person. If you define so, Lalkis Advani was not a religious
Yes.
person per se. Even Mr. Modi is not known for his religiosity. After becoming the prime minister, he is trying to portray himself as a Hindutva icon who is here to take Hindu religion to the larger glory. But these three icons, and I deliberately chose these three icons, Savarkar, Lalkis Advani, and the Modi, because all three had a definite roles into the projection and expansion of Hindutva per se, Hindutva as an ideology. But all three, in my opinion, are not a devout Hindu, in my opinion, a devout religious person in that sense. So that shows that that they are using religion. They are using religion for their political purposes, for the larger goal. It's something like this. Jinnah created Pakistan, but Jinnah, everybody knows, was a hardcore secularist who had no belief in religion, but he exploited religion for his political goals, for the creation of Pakistan. And there are innumerable number of instances in history that Jinnah used to smoke, Jinnah used to drink, Jinnah used to eat pork, and he was very fond of ham sandwiches. But look at the irony of the situation. Here is the man who created Pakistan in the name of Islam, and the lakhs of the people were killed and brutalized by his experiment. But he had no faith in religion per se. He was not a devout religious person in that sense. So that is why I say this Hindutva is basically a political philosophy, a political ideology which uses religion for the furtherance of their own political goals.
Yes, Ashutosh, I will just be the devil's advocate. You know,
Yes.
you named three people: Savarkar, Advani, and Modi. I will agree with you on completely on the first two. But here on the third case, Mr. Modi's case, I will pose a question. I'm not questioning what your postulation is, but I'm raising a question. Even when he was chief minister, before he became prime minister, after that, the manifestation and his display of being a devout Hindu has definitely grown and been publicized because of the necessity of the, political necessity of the office that he's in. But even before, when he was in Gujarat, when his religiosity was not being displayed, uh, they did, we did know that he fasts on the two Navratris in a year. So, which means that there is possibly a religious facet to his personality, which he did not display previously. But after he became prime minister, and as he realized that this is the direction in which the political vehicle, which is charioteering, would go, so he started displaying his religiosity also. The entire, before the visit to the US in 2014, you would remember that it suddenly got very publicized that he fasts on all the 9 days of the Navratri. He does not. He drinks only water, nothing, consumes nothing, and that is the time when the visit was made. So it became projected right from almost day one that he, is a devout Hindu. Would you say that it was fairly well planned to also project him as a devout Hindu, something which was not really done for Mr. Advani?
See, we have to make a difference between who a person Hindu is and who is a Hindutvadi. See,
Right.
my father is a
Yes.
highly religious person, highly religious person. My mother is also highly religious person. They keep fast, and they are Hindu by birth. So
mm,
within Hindu fold, yeah, within Hindu religion or Hindu dharma, there is no permanent definition of who the Hindu is. Like in Christianity,
mm,
like in Judaism, like in Islam. Like Judaism,
mm,
you have to believe that you are a chosen few. You believe into the promised land, and you believe
mm,
into an Abraham. Like
mm.
Islam, there's the five tenets. If you like, you keep fast, you pray all 5 times. So there is a marker who can be a Muslim, who can be a Christian, who can
Right.
be a Judaism.
But for
But
Hindu,
in
there is nothing.
Hinduism, there's nothing. Even the question was asked to Gandhi, how you define Hindus? Are you? He said, I'm a Sanatani Hindu because I'm born in a Hindu family, because I believe in Vedas and Upanishad, because I believe in the protection of cow, and I believe that all religions are equal and there is no difference between them. There's no enmity between them. So there is no permanent definition of Hindu religion per se. You can't define it in that sense. The only marker is I am born in a Hindu family, so I am a Hindu. Well, if I am vegetarian, I am a Hindu. If I am a non-vegetarian, I am a Hindu. If I am Kanikubj, I am a Hindu. If I am born as a Shudra, I'm a Hindu. And there are whether I believe in Shiv, whether I believe in Ganesh, whether I believe in Vishnu, whether I believe in any, there is no bar per se. So Modi
Right.
per se is a is Hindu by birth, and
Mm,
his upbringing is also done in the Hindu ecosystem. But
right.
was he a devout Hindu in that sense? Devout Hindu in the sense somebody who is a Kattarpanthi in that sense.
Right.
Was he something like that? At least I have interacted him
We have
quite
no
a lot,
idea.
but I have never
We,
never seen that he was a
we
very
have.
very
Yes.
very Kattar in that sense. But after becoming the chief minister of Gujarat, and especially after the Gujarat riots, I
Mm,
think when he sensed that his popularity is going beyond Gujarat, and
mm,
he being a fatally ambitious person, he decided to project himself as a Hindu, as a
leader.
Hindutvadi leader who is there to take Hindu to the larger audience, and to
Mm,
make it to get back its past glory. I think it was a very, in my, when
right.
what I say is that he is probably a first industry produced a political leader whose everything, every move, every action, every function of him, every appearance of him is extremely calculated to project him, to create a cult around him.
Right.
Because I know Narendra Modi when he was the general secretary in BJP. I interacted with him. I had a lot of
Yes.
interviews with him. I had never seen that Narendra Modi had those qualities at those point of time, and he was a pretty normal person in that sense. But
Yes.
after becoming the chief minister, and especially after the Gujarat riot, when he realized that he could be a big leader, he can take the country forward and can become the prime minister. You remember in 2007 elections, Gujarat election, the many industrialists were very fond of saying Mr. Narendra Modi has the capability to take the country forward as a prime minister. And the top-notch industrialists of the country used to say that. What I got to know it that many of them were told by the office of the chief minister that you please say something like this. Even I was told by one of the ambassadors. I had an occasion to meet him, and she said, I'm not uh,
Mm, yes.
using the gender, that we were pressurized by the PMO, that the head of the state in which I work, in a country where I'm working, that he should say some fine things about Mr. Narendra Modi. Why?
Mm,
What does it show? He, it shows that he is very conscious of his image, and he always want to reinvent his image, and want to project that he is a much larger than anybody else. And like
mm,
you see, in 2014 onwards, you see his speeches during the election and off elections, where he says, I have been hinting that he's a destiny's child, and he has been
mm,
sent by God, sent by Bhagwan, कि वो कुछ बड़ा कराना चाहते हैं. And he
yes.
had gone to an extent that he became a matter of joke when during the election he said कि मैं तो non biological
Not,
हूँ.
not a
So everybody
biological.
thinks that he just used it without understanding. But in my opinion, he used it deliberately, because to make the voters realize that they are not choosing a simple leader, They are choosing somebody who's destined to make this country great, to bring back the past glory. And he was putting in that pedestal. And that is where he tries to differentiate himself from the rest of the leaders in the country, and also the former prime minister of this country. He puts him in a different. So in my opinion, he's a first industry created a cult which has succeeded tremendously. Of course, he has his own genius. I'm not discounting that.
Yeah. You referred very briefly in while you were answering this question, to your father. In fact, you start your book, with this account from your own family, which is actually fairly common to many of us journalists. We have seen that many of our, especially in the last 30-35 years, from the time that the Ram Janmabhoomi agitation started in the mid 1980s, we saw that, we got increasingly alienated in our families because the others started articulating views with which we did not agree. Some of us, at least the two of us, had a political upbringing, as a result of which we disagreed with the RSS movement. And so you make a very important point while doing this, that in this there is actually this, you actually use the maze of ideological belief. The distinction has to be made between Hindu assertion and Hindutva. Quite often, we kind of mix this. You talked about your father's assertion, about the Ram Bhumi, this question which was put to you by either your father or your brother, that if not in Ayodhya, where would a Ram temple be built? It is a question which, even I have heard from many friends and, family members over the last few years. So the question is that there is something called Hindu assertion and there is something called Hindu. How do you differentiate these two? How do you say that this Hindu assertion is not a supporter of Hindutva?
Let me take back. Let me go back in past. The incident which you are referring to, I think there's. This was when my father was posted in Banaras, and I was born in Banaras, and then at that point of time I was in JNU and I was studying. And then Ram Janmabhoomi Andolan started, and it was in 1991-92. So there's a riot happened in Banaras, Madanpura riot, and I had gone to cover because at that point of time I was working with Saptaik Hindustan. So during one of the discussions, I had a heated argument with my father, not exactly very heated argument, but like an argument which has gone a little too far. So he suddenly said ki yahan nahi banega to kahan banega? I was taken aback. But this incident, after 30 years, later in future, now when I look back after 30 years, I make a difference that Hindu assertion is not necessarily a Hindutvadi aggression. We have to make a difference. As a Hindu, I can assert my being, I can assert my values, I can assert my religious identity, I can assert my Hindu existence. But that necessarily does not mean that I am a Muslim hater. I hate others' religion. I like my father for the simple reason because despite asserting his Hindu identity, he wanted a Ram Mandir to be built. But in my entire life, I had not seen him hating any Muslim per se. In fact, his best friends were Muslims when we were living in Mirzapur. And in Mirzapur, there's a fairly large number of Muslims there because of the carpet industry and otherwise also. And we still, and in fact, from my when I was in school, a lot of my Muslim friends used to come my house. My father never objected, never said a wrong word about them. So, and that is why I see there is a very fine line between Hindu assertion and the Hindutva aggression. Hindutva per se, which we are witnessing today, the core value is to hate Muslims. That's the core value. And RSS had never hidden that. Savarkar has defined that in a different way, but Golwalkar had taken to the different extreme altogether. In fact, Deen Dayal Upadhyaya discusses that we can't throw 7 crores Muslims to the sea, so we have to live with them. If given an opportunity, they would have thrown them into the sea, but they know they can't do it, so we have to live with them. Now, how to live with them? Make them second-class citizens. So the Hindutva, in my opinion, is the core value is hate Muslims. And that is why every opportunity you get, every leader of BJP, they can't speak of 5 sentences without referring to the Islam or without referring to the Muslims, and that is what defines them. And so I make a very clear distinction between Hindu assertion should not be confused with the Hindutva aggression. My father is a devout Hindu in that sense. He believes into it, but he doesn't hate anybody. He doesn't hate the persons of other faith. And that's what the difference is. That is what the communalization is all about. Communalization basic feature is to hate others, whether in the name of religion or whether in the name of anything else. So I think I make that distinction.
Right. So Hindu Rashtra, that is what your book was titled. So Hindu Rashtra is obviously the deliverance, what is delivered by the waging the campaign and the ideology of Hindutva. So would you say that Hindu Rashtra is all about continuously and endlessly keeping on imagining and portraying history as nothing but a continuing conflict between Hindus and Muslims, and that it can end only with the establishment of Hindu hegemony? This is what actually Savarkar was also saying, that it's a history in full. It's not religious, so Hindutva is history.
See, I do not know how the history will judge Mohan Bhagwat, but he appears to be one of the very few moderate RSS leader, probably in the league of Devras, in my opinion, because Devras could be called as a left in the right wing. His opinion in that there is a highly political person, but who used religion, Hindu religion, to further their political ideology. Mohan Bhagwat even had gone to the extent of saying in 2023 in Ahmedabad in some RSS meeting where he said Hindus are engaged into a 1200 years war, and Hindus cannot afford to lose that war, and we are always attacked and attacked and attacked, and there are internal weaknesses. So if you rephrase all this, you will and juxtaposes with what Golwalkar has said, it exactly the same thing. That Golwalkar has also referred about the internal enemies. The only difference is that Mohan Bhagwat uses the word internal weakness instead of internal enemies. Probably they have realized that in the modern context, to calling Muslims as an internal enemy and should be thrown out is not so politically incorrect. Not politically correct. But he openly says that we are engaged in a 1200 years of war and we can't afford to lose it. Now, this is what their interpretation of history is, and this is how they perceive history. And within this historical context, they realize that Hindus Hindus were ruled by other religions because one of the fundamental reason was Islam and then the Christianity. But they do not attack Christianity per se, but they attack Islam. Probably it can be 2 reasons. One reason is that the Muslims are more visible and they don't hide their identity per se. In fact, the more Hindutvawadis have become aggressive, you see the more commitment within the Muslim community to present their Muslim identity. That's slightly contradictory, but that is true. Whereas in contrast, the Christians don't flaunt their Christianity per se. Sometimes you don't even find it unless you are spoken by the name. And the second reason is, and this is really very fascinating. When the Vande Mataram controversy erupted, I decided to read the book by Bankim Chand Chattopadhyay. And in that book, in the end, when the revolutionaries, they say कि क्या हिंदू राज्य जब स्थापित होने वाला है, तो वो जवाब देते हैं, उनके गुरु जवाब देते हैं कि नहीं, हिंदू राज्य अभी नहीं बनेगा. तो बोले फिर क्या फायदा हुआ, अब तो अंग्रेज आ गए हैं. तो कहता है यवन राज्य तो खत्म हो गया लेकिन अंग्रेज आ गए हैं. तब वो कहते हैं कि जो ये जो अंग्रेज हैं, ये सनातन हिंदुओं के रक्षक है. नाउ लुक एट दिस, द बुक which is which is a guiding light for the all the Hindutvawadis. This line is there कि जो क्रिश्चियनिटी है एक तरीके से वो उनके लिए एक सनातन के रक्षक की तरीके से काम करेगी और उनके मित्र हैं. So when he's referring to this 1200 years of war and
Yes.
the hatred which you see in their ideology and their utterances against Islam, you can easily relate to what that book talks about and how that is projected and how fiercely they want Vande Mataram to be imposed on this country. And anybody who is not willing to pray our Vande Mataram will be immediately clubbed as like he's anti-national. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. We are talking about Hindu Rashtra as their objective. So let us now talk about an imaginary situation when, in their definition, India is in a state where Hindu Rashtra has really come into being. Would you say that end point would be when Hinduism becomes a state religion? Is that the objective?
RSS ideologues makes a very clear distinction. But again, I take that distinction with a pinch of salt. I take that distinction with a pinch of salt because they say Hindu Rashtra is not a theocratic concept. They say it's not a. That means the state should not be governed and guided by religion. Our statecraft should not be defined by Hindu religion as it is defined in Iran, as is defined in the different Middle East countries, as it is defined in our neighbor in Pakistan. They make a clear distinction. They also talk about that in Hindu Rashtra, the state will not differentiate between the different religions. They also say that the state will not suppress other religions. They very categorically say. They say that Hinduism respects the diversity. They say this. But I have a different take, and probably I have not reached to a final conclusion. But I firmly started believing that if they are in a position to capture the entire state, they're still not. They are in the process of capturing that in the Indian state, and that is why I coined the word the march of an ideological state. They are in the process of capturing that state. If somehow they get more than 400 seats, or reach to a position where they can capture the Indian state completely, then I have no doubt in my mind that they will declare Hindu as a state religion. I have no doubt in my mind on that.
You have no doubt.
I have no doubt on my mind that Hindu. But since now they have to operate within the four walls of the constitution, which is secular in nature, and which takes lot of pride in diversity. So what they are building a parallel edifice of their ideology on the question of secularism and state religion. What they are preaching now, subtly, if you look at, when they say that in Hindu Rashtra, the different faiths will be respected, they will have equality, they will be ordained equality, and no discrimination will be made. All these things. But if you look at what is happening in 2014 onwards, and now they are building an ideological edifice around it, that yes, we respect diversity. Every other religion and the faith will have a freedom to propagate their religion and to worship their religion. But Hinduism, Hindu Dharma will be the first among the equals. It's like the prime minister first among the equals. So when it comes to protecting a religion, then state will protect the Hindu religion per se. So the Hindu religion will have a state protection, will have a state control, state guardianship. And if you look at what is happening, if Namazi prays his namaz on the road, he will be arrested. But have you seen any Hindu worshipping or doing something on the road which is religious in nature? None of them has ever been arrested. None. No. Prime Minister flaunts his Hindu identity. Prime Minister goes to the different temples, projects him, wears clothes, something like that. So that what is saying. Yes, Mussalman has a right to perform their religious duties. Christians have a right that they can go to the church, they can go to the mosque, they can go to the synagogues. but state. Don't compare yourself with Hinduism. You are not at par with Hinduism. This has
The
been
message.
it started very subtly in the beginning. Now it is robustly being presented. And I was reading a book by some Hindutvadi ideologue, and that book clearly defines that why they abhor Indian constitution, because they think that Indian constitution is basically a manifestation of the Christian thought process, because within the Christian thought process there is a difference between state and religion, and this book also reflects that. They also make a distinction between state and religion, and that is why it's a Christian product. So this has to be thrown into somewhere. They're not saying that in as many words, but they're hinting at that. So they want a Hindu Rashtra, and if they capture the state, then obviously Hindu Dharma will be a state religion. I have no doubt in my mind. And since
Right.
then, they will in their order of precedence among the religion, Hinduism will get the protection of the state and the statecraft, and others can operate if they want to operate like a second great religion.
At this point, I think it's very natural to rake up something which you have quite often said, in conversations, also in public record. You have said that for the BJP, RSS, and for all the other Hindutvawadis, their ultimate enemy is Gandhi. Why so? Gandhi was such a devout Hindu. Why should they think of him as the ultimate enemy? And why should Gandhi have been the first victim of political assassination in independent India?
Nilanjana, if Gandhi had used violence, I think Gandhi would have been the biggest deity for the RSS.
Yes.
For RSS and Hindutvadi, unfortunately, Gandhi was an apostle of peace. Gandhi was apostle of non-violence. And because in their analysis of history, when they go back in history, they realize how the decline of Hindu religion started. Before BC, if you look at, Hindu religion was flourishing, though it was being challenged and confronted by Jainism, confronted by Buddhism, confronted by Ajivikas, confronted by I'm forgetting the name, confronted by many others in 500 BC and the 400 BC. But it was when the Ashok decides to become Buddhist, and he practices non-violence. Look at, and that is where they think the Hinduism demise started. And in 182 BC, Hinduism again resurrects itself in a different form when Pushyamitra Sunga becomes a Brahman becomes the emperor.
Yes.
And he uses sword. He kills Buddhists in large number. And then when it gets
to the resurrection of Hinduism.
When it gets the patronage among the Gupta Kal, Samudragupta, Chandragupta, all that, then suddenly you see Hinduism flourishing again at a very gets back its past glory, though in a different form. The Hinduism before Ashoka was a different kind of Hinduism. The Hinduism after Pushyamitra Sung is a different kind of religion. Lot of ritualism came in, lot of other things have also came in. So in their opinion, that why Hindu was ruled by for such a long period of time, because Hindus did not use violence. Hindus did not, they became pacifist, and so they couldn't fight Islamists. They couldn't fight the Muslim rulers. They couldn't fight them, and their army was 8,000. Hindus were a lakh, but still they got defeated. That's a wrong analysis of history, because if you don't update yourself with the modern technology, obviously you are going to be defeated. And if you remain fighting among themselves, if you just designate that only a small section of the population only they have a right to fight and become the warrior, obviously you will be defeated. But that's a different story altogether. So they, in their analysis, they believe that non-violence is the reason for Hindus being ruled by first by Muslims, and then by Christians. In fact, they also believe in that Shak, Hun, Kushan. They were
Yes.
also came, but they forgive them, and because they became a part of us. Muslims, they have not become a part of us. The Christians,
Well, according to the RSS, and also unfortunately, that is also accepted by the Indian Constitution. Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs, which to some extent, all of them, Jainism possibly the least, but Sikhism and Buddhism definitely came out as a divergence to Hinduism, but they are now considered to be part of Hindu religion. It's only Islam and Christianity which is kept out of the ambit of being a Hindu, even constitutionally. That's the unfortunate thing. Let me ask you one question. You after the 2024 elections, you wrote another book in which basically you looked at the 2024 results as a kind of a sign of hope. What led to it? There were various factors. I would say that, even after 2024, many of us, including me, shared some kind of an optimism at the electoral decline, at the failure of the BJP to get a majority on their own and being able to come into power only with the assistance of coalition partners. But the idea, the notion that what this would lead to be has been completely, our viewpoint, what we anticipated has not happened. In today's situation, when there have been several assembly elections, where the BJP has won, barring only Jharkhand, do you think India has reached a point of no return as far as Hindutva is concerned?
It's a tough question. I wish I had an
Very
answer to
tough
this,
question,
but
yes.
let me try to answer the question. Let me try to answer the question. First of all, we have to understand that why in 2024 BJP could not get more than 300 seats, or could not get the majority on its own, because they were, the challenges emerged within the Hindu community itself, like the OBCs, the Dalits. They somewhere during the line they realized that they are trying to change the constitution if they get 400 seats. If they get 400 seats, then obviously they are going to change constitution, and they will convert it into Hindu Rashtra. And for OBCs and the Dalits, and more with the Dalits, the constitution gives them an identity. Constitution empowers them. Constitution,
Yes.
because Indian society had never been an equal society. And that's what the Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said, the graded inequality. It has always been an unequal society. So first time the equality was given to them, offered to them, and they started enjoying the fruits of being equal before law and before judiciary, and they got the political equality. But still simmering inside them is the equality, liberty, and the fraternity. They still had not been ordained the fraternity, that the social dignity which should come with the constitution is still far away from them. So they realize that they are still struggling with the social equality, and if they change the constitution, there is a possibility that they will not even get the political equality, or the judicial equality, or the legal equality. So that is why they reacted sharply. And look at the two states which has reacted more sharply than any state is UP and Maharashtra. UP has been a land of Dalit assertion, led by Kanshiram and Mayawati, and in fact they had the privilege of making a first Dalit chief minister in context. Maharashtra, as we all know, the Sauji Maharaj, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and Jyotiba Phule. It has been a robust land for the Dalit assertion. In these two states, the BJP lost massively. They lost.
Yes.
So the challenge is their challenge is not from the outside. They are happy to face a challenge from the Islam and the Christianity. The challenge is coming from within the Hindu religion itself, within the Hindu community itself. And challenge is and within the constitutional framework, if we look at the ideological compulsion, sometimes has to make a tactical retreat for the electoral benefits, for the electoral expediency. So they know that BJP knows that if they lose the support of Dalits and the backwards, even then they will find it difficult to form the government. And this is the lesson of 2024. And that is where I think that Rahul Gandhi's victory lies there, because people doesn't normally give him credit. It is one man who single-handedly has raised the issue of caste census, and for that he was mocked, insulted, intimidated, and was called all kinds of names. But the campaign which he took from Nitish Kumar and started from the Kolar assembly constituency in Karnataka when the assembly elections are happening, he continued mercilessly on that. And finally, he forced BJP and the RSS to concede that point. Look at after Pahalgam, the first thing happened was Mohan Bhagwat goes
Caste,
and meet Narendra
caste
Modi,
census.
and on 30th of April, the caste census government announces that they are for the caste
Yes.
census. So they're facing challenges from the Hindu community itself, and many people call it is almost a fashion to call a majoritarian state, a majoritarian politics. I call it the minority complex within the majority community. What is the minority complex? Because the minority within the Hindu community, they are suffering from a persecution complex, and they want to project is that the entire Hindu community is within that. And let's not forget it. What I have been studying of late, the Iranian state, and I reached
Yes.
to the conclusion that within the Iranian revolution, 80% of the population do not subscribe to what the Khomeini does or what the Islamic ideology is doing. But since they have a very strong 20% of the population and entrenched into the every sector of the society, deeply entrenched into
Yes.
state apparatus, so they control the whole state apparatus and call it a Islamic revolution in that sense. Similarly, within the Hindutva fold, if you look at around 20% of they have been able to capture the mindset of the 20% of the population, and mostly from the upper caste, with
Right.
some kind of adjustment with the OBCs and the Dalits. So if you look at their hardcore support base, it doesn't transcend more than 20%, maybe 22, 23%. And that is why they find it difficult to go beyond 36%. At the best, they got 37% in 2019.
That's
The
right.
worst performance was in 2014 when they got only 31%. Just imagine, only
30%.
31%. And
31%.
in 2024, they got only 36% of population. The Congress formed the government on their own every time, had more than 40% vote share. So that shows that the challenge is coming from within the Hindu community. How they face that challenge, how they accommodate them, how they appropriate them, how they convince them, depends on that. Whether they get the day they will get 40% vote share, I have no doubt in my mind that they will change the constitution and they will go for the Hindu Rashtra.
Well, very well explained, Ashutosh. We will conclude on this point. I know it is very difficult to look ahead and say that this might happen. But in this series of programs, some episodes ago, one of the uh, guests who was there conversing with me, just like you have done, said that the basic goal is nothing but to install or rather reinstall a Brahminical patriarchy. That is the basic goal of Hindutva. We do not know if that will happen or not. We do not know, as this very tricky question which I posed to Ashutosh you, that is this the end of the road as far as the India that was envisioned in 1947? We really do not know. But thank you very much for joining me and giving some amount of light on Hindutva, its difference with religious assertion, Hindu Rashtra, all these ideas which we use ad nauseum without really being completely clear about it. So I think that the viewers will say that there is a bit of clarity in the horizon. Thank you very much, Ashutosh, once again.